So we're going to have a panel to talk about our communique. I'm going to invite 4 people who are working on the communique. We're going to hear a little bit more about the process. But generally, this is one of these examples of how work gets done in the Alliance. There's been a fantastic amount of work happening the last several months because the thing we're releasing today is a communique that says this is what the world's young entrepreneurs need from the world's leaders. And that just doesn't come out of nowhere. We just don't ask somebody, tell us what this should be. We actually reach out and put a lot of thought into it. So please join me in welcoming Megan Bissett, Pallavi. Okay. We have a large Indian contingent in the room, right? Okay. Pallavi Chomkabora from India. I hate to tell our Indian friends, but I think the Canadians are out cheering you. Okay. We have French people in the room, yes? The Français ici, oui. We have Benjamin Boutin from France. And last but not least, we have Chris Beckford from the UK. Okay, fantastic. Please take your seats. So Megan, I'm going to start with you. There's a lot of process behind making something so complex look so simple. So tell us a little bit about how you guys wrote this communique, because we're going to be signing it in about half an hour. So tell us how that happened.
Thank you, Alex. So I have the extreme pleasure of being the chair of the Communique Drafting Committee at the Alliance. So you must know, of course, the Alliance is a collaborative effort between a variety of nonprofit youth chambers organizations that have the interest of young entrepreneurs at heart. So as a result of that, when young entrepreneurs come together, there's a lot of innovative thinking that comes into play. It happens at the summit, but this communique is very much a result of the consultative process that came into play before that. So on stage with me are the members of this Communique Drafting Committee, but it was also the result of opportunities for all of the countries of the Alliance to provide what the opportunities and priorities for their delegations were.
Okay, fantastic. Now, throughout this whole conference, in addition to the polling we just did, there was other, and I would say, more successful in the first run polling, where we would put up issues and say, how do you feel about these issues? So for our tech team, if we could get those polls up behind us, I'd just like to share with you what you were voting on over the last couple of days, because those were linked to the priorities that your team identified in the communique. So if our tech team can put up those polling results, please. Okay, not that one. Here we go. So if you look down in the monitor, actually if we can get in the monitor, it'd be great. This surprised me because we asked people, do you think your country is doing a good job at inclusion? If you remember, we had a whole bunch of panels and people talking about the need to extend the opportunity that we all enjoy to more people. And people think, I think in one of the other slides, they said, yes, we think it's an important issue, but my country's doing a good job. Who wants to talk to that? Because that seems a little counterintuitive. We say inclusion's important, but it must be the other people who are doing it. Chris, you going to touch that? Okay, Chris.
Well, thank you, Alex. Inclusivity is a huge subject, and obviously it embodies the spirit of HUM. And the next generation of economic growth will be powered by inclusivity. As societies empower young people who are denied the opportunity to start, grow, and scale their businesses, I think we should celebrate our differences, whether it's gender, sex, geography, socioeconomic status. This is untapped potential, and it will fuel the economy.
Okay.
I use the analogy of a hybrid car, and I think inclusivity uses the extra capacity. So we call upon G20 leaders to commit to supporting measures that proactively address the imbalances in supply of talent, skills, and labor by training, mentoring, upskilling, targeted financial and capital investments, legal reforms, progressive legislation, and lastly, addressing barriers to inclusive trade and access to global value chains. In short, removing the glass ceiling and encouraging meritocracy.
Okay, so this is interesting, and some applause on that. Thank you. Who else would like to weigh in on what appears to be a bit of a conundrum? Because if we go ahead a few slides, there's a graph that says, I think this is a very important issue. Inclusion is a very important issue. But yet people are saying, I think my country's doing fine. Is this passing the buck, or are countries actually doing okay? Who wants to touch this? Megan.
I'm happy to touch it.
Yeah.
I think this also reflects the fact, that it doesn't mean that there's not work to be done. I think looking at the kinds of policies that are being implemented in a variety of the G20 countries, there are some changes happening at the entrepreneurial ecosystem level. I think that's also something to look into. The civil society movement, we've talked at great length about governmental priorities today. And I think this is a great way to connect the differences that exist also between the young entrepreneurs, the ecosystem that support them, as well as civil society. And if I may say, on the Canadian side, we're really proud to be leading this drafting process. And in that, we try to ensure that all of our entrepreneurs have a voice. And Tommy said it in the previous panel, I think specifically, ensuring that no one gets left behind. And I think this has really been the theme that has portrayed the summit today. And I want to mention on the Canadian side our two task force leads that have very much been leading this process, Nina Lentinga and Bryce Watts. If I could just ask you to stand up, please.
Come on, guys, stand up. Stand up. There you go. Thank you.
So if you have any question or want to discuss sustainability, inclusive innovation, these are your guys, especially in addition to this wonderful panel.
Okay. So let's advance a few slides and look at the results, and I'd love to get the panel's opinion on what's going on. So this is what we heard on inclusion. Let's have a look at a few more slides, please. What makes you happy as an entrepreneur? We had an actual guru on stage talking about happiness, for those of you who missed it. Often at these conferences, they'll say, so-and-so is a guru in their field. He's actually a guru who talked about happiness. It was great. But we've got a very interesting split here. Only 5%, 1 in 20 of you said, money is what makes me happy. I find that very interesting because outside of entrepreneurship, people often look at us and say, oh, those people are motivated by money. Apparently not. Who wants to touch this? Pallavi, what do you think?
First of all, namaste, G20 YEA. In fact, it is completely a dream come true for me to be a present in this summit. It was absolute pleasure to be a part of the organizing committee. And I'm telling you, this was a lifetime experience for me to be a part of this drafting committee, drafting the communique, which is going to go to different governments. So that's really, really big. With respect to your question, it was very interesting because how everything is very, there is like 19%, 17% with all the thing, in most of the things, except for achieving goals and purpose, because it is almost like two similar things. Mm-hmm. But entrepreneurship is also about profit. So, money is important. So I'm really, really happy at whosoever has chosen money. But at the end of the day, whether money gives you happiness, that is something that you have to think about. And I think people would be happier if their purpose is achieved, or the innovations, or trying to save the world. Because there's another slide which talks about trying to save the world. I think that's what people are more happy about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. And this, by the way, shows a really good differentiation between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. There are a lot of people who look for things outside themselves, money, fame, status. We're actually seeing that a lot of this motivation is about people who are internal. Now that could just be a reflection in this room, but really interesting insight. Could we see a few more? And Ben, I'd love to get your opinion on these. Innovative solutions to food problems. Those are about evenly split. Market access, regulatory barriers. Let's see another one. The biggest factor of preventing trade is that people don't know enough about other markets. That's interesting. I wish our ambassador colleagues were in the room to hear that. You, by the way, in being here, are learning a lot about other markets, which is fantastic. Let's see another one. This is a good example of that diversity inclusion is very important. Thanks for the honesty of the 1% of people who said they don't matter. Honesty is good. And let's just see one more. Oh, here we go, SDGs. We're considerably behind in this 2030 Sustainable Development Goal thing. What do we think about that? Benjamin, anything you want to add to that from the French perspective?
Sure. Thank you to all of us for being here, and thank you to our dear Indian friends and to the Canadian leadership for this communique. Very much appreciated. Well, as you know, faced with climate change and destruction of biodiversity, we can see, especially here in India, the need to collect and recycle the products, the materials, and we have to give them another life. So, in fact, a lot of entrepreneurs are already doing it. They create new value chains based on recycled products. However, we need, at the international scale, common frames, common standards to ensure that materials suitable for recycling can cross borders easily and more quickly. So our communiqué, Gill, call upon G20 leaders to set up clear standards and regulations to facilitate the flow of recycled materials across borders and create a truly global circular market.
Very interesting. So this is a good example of how the communique make things very practical. Often SDGs, people have very lofty goals. Well, we should have a circular economy. What you guys are saying in the communique is one thing that helps that happen are standards that allow recycled materials to flow between countries so they can be put to their best use. So very, very good point. Let's look at one final slide before we try to wrap. Artificial intelligence. Okay. Are we all going to be replaced by AI on this stage? Apparently not. People don't seem to think that replacing human employment is what's going on, but they do think it's pretty even. We're going to acquire new skills. We're going to have changing job roles, not replacing, and we're going to be able to focus on things that are higher up the value chain while the robots do all the work. Who wants to touch this one? Megan, final word to you. What do you think?
I think the split really shows that there's a lot more that we can learn from young entrepreneurs. Everyone has different views on the topic. And I know AI has been a very trendy topic in the last couple of years. But I think the importance too is looking at how entrepreneurs are contributing to this facet of innovation. The point of meeting today and the point of consultation that we've had before the communiqué was also to see what are the kinds of barriers that young entrepreneurs are facing in order to tap into the innovation ecosystem. There was a wide variety of input from entrepreneurs, especially on the Canadian side. I'm biased that way, so I'm going to speak to that a little bit. But looking at either what are the priorities for young entrepreneurs when it comes to these big topics, including digitization, innovation, deep tech, AI, but also what are some of the priorities they have in order to support the next generation of entrepreneurs who, like them, will have similar barriers because these unfortunately still exist.
Okay. So final word, and then we'll break our panel. Our Brazilian friends who are here are going to be holding this summit in Brazil next year. And they're going to tell us about that, by the way, in about half an hour. What recommendations do we have for our Brazilian friends, not about what they should focus on, but on how they should do their communique? What do you think? Okay. Top 3 things you'd recommend they do. Oh, Pallavi.
I think the process that we followed was really democratic. I mean, like we involved decision opinions from everyone. I think our Brazilian friends should actually start drafting the communique. Of course, we would suggest that build up your communique on the communique that we are presenting now, because there are certain goals that we would want to achieve. So the goals, we have to ensure whether we have achieved that, whether the recommendations were finally implemented by the government or not, and to build on it, and of course, start the process immediately. I mean, like, we used to have a Tuesday meeting every month. You know, these are like months, and then that month, that entire month, we would go back to our leaders, go back, you know, get their recommendations, bring them on the table, and then we used to streamline. So, you know, that's my advice, yeah.
Okay, great. Final word to you, Chris, and then we're going to break. Oh, actually, we'll go quickly.
Yeah, very quickly. I'll just say, I think we should use the data from the conference. So I think, obviously, entrepreneurs are here doing the polls.
Yep.
And use the priorities from the polls
Okay.
to set the agenda for next year.
Okay, so we have build on the previous thing, build on what's in the summit.
And talking about the impact of the communique, I think all the people here are influencers, they are change makers, so they can make a difference, taking our recommendations and bringing them to their own governments. That's what Citizen Entrepreneur does in France. Last year we brought our recommendations to the Minister of Economy and Industry, and we're going to do the same thing this year. So I invite our Brazilian friends to take the torch, and every one of you to settle the change you want to see in the world. You know, the Mahatma Gandhi once said, "Be the change you want to see in the world," and it really resonates with the theme of this summit.
Here, here. Very good note on which to end. Join me in thanking the panel. Ladies, gentlemen, thank you.